Hey, it's Taylor with Top Pick Trading. It's Friday, June 21st, 2024, and I want to give you guys your bar by bar for the day. Hope you guys had a good trading day. Overall, pretty good week. Yesterday was nice. Kind of slow on Tuesday, and then obviously we weren't able to trade on Wednesday due to the holiday. So, all right, so let's get started on today's price action. So, if you came in at 8 a.m. Eastern, that would be this bar right here. This is the ES 2000 tick chart, as usual. So you'd see your daily highs and daily lows. Looks like there's a trend here. We draw that. Looks like there's no new extreme for me yet, but we do have a break. Here's your overnight range for the time being. And this bar represents 8 a.m. right here. So we're just kind of in the middle. We're expecting a retest from this downtrend, but if it ends up being a range for the day, that could change. But for now, we're expecting some kind of retest. So let's see. We get a lower high right here, but it's very far from the EMA near this temporary support level, or we've bounced twice here. So I don't think there's a good trade to take right there. There's also some congestion stacking up. And it looks like it would have worked for a small scalp. Then it bounces pretty strongly. We got a micro trend working up. Looks like maybe a break new extreme on that already. Pushes up to this area. Turns right here, and maybe our main resistance is right here now. You can see we've turned here twice, once, the second time, really twice right in here to micro level. We pushed back below that EMA, still expecting, especially since we didn't correct to the overnight highs, we're expecting a probable retest on this downtrend right here. So maybe we can get some lower high, and we actually do get that lower high right here. It is kind of in the middle of this range action. If this was an overall range for the day, I'd be leery of this. But since we traded down into this and we're expecting that retest, I think this is a pretty decent trade to take. It did move a bit far for a lower high, but still, that bar is really nice. Decent setup bar, a little bit of wick on it, but it still pushed back and put into that EMA for the most part. So I like that trade there. You can market aggressive if you think it's moved a bit far for the lower high, but with the overall bias, I think it's a pretty good trade. You can see it would have worked nicely. We approach these overnight lows. Obviously, we've got a micro trend in play here now. And now we are at the open. See if we fall back down to the support level or even retest. And we bounce here at the support level. So now this seems like the real deal. We've turned here once, twice, a third time. This could be considered a retest on the downtrend already. We didn't get the new low, but your more local stuff has played out. You've got the break new extreme from this, and we bounced here a third time. We're pretty far from the EMA, and now we get this higher low set up right here, pretty far from that EMA. Like I said, it's bounced here, even at a micro level once, twice, three times, fourth time. This is the fifth time here. So with that good of a bar, nice setup bar, rejecting off of these lows, I think this is a great trade. You can see that would have worked nicely. We've got some micro trend working now right here. We've got a failure, but this is mid-range, so I would not take this failure. It's also breaking that trend line. The micro trend line doesn't trigger anyway. You get another bar for it. Would work for a small scalp, but taking failures mid-range like that can be can result in a lot of failures. So we get this lower high here. Setup bar is terrible. It does close below that EMA, but you can see this looks more like a micro range. We traded down and then up and then down. So I don't like that. Nice rejection bar off that midline, but we may be headed back to the highs. It's hard to know here. Would need a better setup bar to consider that. And it does work, pushes lower. We've got some micro trend working again right here. Pushes right to those lows. We get that failure. Failed second entry long, but it's right into those lows, so I don't think you want to take that. It works nicely, but hard to know that. We get this lower high here, so far from the EMA. It does test the overnight lows, which potentially are acting as resistance, but hard to take that, in my opinion, just very far. Keep pushing lower. Maybe an overshoot on this now. Does appear to be one. Pushes back. We get a first entry, second entry, but the bar is not all that great. You've also, it looks like maybe you could argue that this is played out, but the bar is just not all that great. We've also got the overshoot, so that makes you wary of this retest, and it doesn't always retest. After that, you need a really good setup at the EMA, and it may would have worked for a small scalp. Now you get this equal high right here for technical lower high, but I don't like this trade either. Traded strongly back up into the EMA, didn't stay away from it for very long. Couple ticks on that, doesn't trigger anyway, and now it's starting to look a little more stacked. Doesn't trigger anyway. Now we push up back to this level, which we would expect to test at the very least if we're going to continue lower. Bars aren't all that great, and just right near that EMA after 3 bullish bars, it would have worked. Pushes lower. Basically bounces at a double bottom. So essentially you have the retest, but it may push down one more time. Let's see. And we get no setup anyway. Starts to chop higher. Looks like maybe there's a little range below the overnight range here. Let's see if it holds. No, it pushes strongly to the upside. Maybe some trend like this. It doesn't fit all that well yet, but that midline does hold rather well. But the highs look a little odd. There's a little gap here, but we'll keep an eye on it. We get a first entry long, and now we get the second entry long. It does confirm it. It looks like, if I adjust just barely. The problem is you don't know if this is a midline or an overshoot. It's right into those overnight lows right here. So if you took that, I understand. But given where it is, right into that low, I don't like it. You can see it reverses on you. Still would be alive, and it ends up working. But it's hard to know that. You get a higher low, but terrible setup bar, closing rather high. Pushes higher once again. And at this point, when you see it continues higher like this, and that EMA held for both swings, it may be even a wider traveling channel like this. It still fits decently well. You can kind of make it fit. A little difficult to know, but that midline's holding again right here, so that makes me think it's probably valid. Hard to take this in real time, though. It's hard to know if it's valid until it pushes higher once again. We get a second entry long right here. Problem is it's right into that midline, not really at the EMA, and it's an inside bar. Would have stopped you out if you went for anything more than a very, very small scalp there. Pushes lower, so now we have a break from this channel. And now we're bouncing at those overnight lows. Obviously, we've got this micro trend in play that may want to retest. It depends how strong these overnight lows are, if it bounces very strongly there. And now we get this higher low here. Kind of tempting, but that micro downtrend is probably going to want to retest. It's hard to know what's going to take precedence in here, these micro trends or the range or the outstanding retest of this. I'd also start watching something like this, because those highs, well, they don't fit all that well yet, so let's just keep that in mind. You get a second entry short, a little bit of wick on there, stacking up, kind of hard to take that. Now let's see if something wider fits. Still not quite. So let's just keep an eye on it. Now we push higher right here, a little bit below those overnight lows, and stacked up a little bit. So it's hard to know what's happening right here. Now we get this higher low. This one's pretty tempting, but once again, the bar's got a couple wicks, a little bit of a wick on top, and it's closing below that EMA. So doesn't trigger anyway. Bouncing in this area again. It's kind of an unknown area. It's hard to know. Got a little congestion here. And now maybe a wider uptrend fits. It's pretty close to fitting now. So you always just have to keep an eye on these. And, you know, it's not perfect. The highs only touch once, but we will keep an eye on it. Let's see. There we go. Pushes higher. Turning at this midline. Seems to be pretty strong resistance. We've turned here a lot already today. And here, then we push through it. Turned off at here, off here, here. So let's keep an eye. Comes back to the EMA. We get a first entry. Pushes to a new high. So now we've got like 2 legs up. Coming back to that EMA, you could draw this trend. It looks like it has a break, no extreme. We bounce right here at that midline, but it's just a first entry and it's very congested. No trigger anyway. Pushes lower, bad bar. Pushes higher, turns almost off these overnight highs. Doesn't quite get there. We get a really strong bar back to the EMA, and it follows through. And now we get another second entry long, but this micro trend was rather strong. There's some congestion stacking up. You could argue we came off the highs. We're not quite there, but it may be enough to turn it right here. So made two lower lows now than this pivot here. So a lot of reasons that that's probably not going to work, and it doesn't trigger anyway. Pushes back here. Let's see how it reacts at the trend line. One thing to keep in mind is we did come up short here if this is valid. So there's a good chance it'll break. And now with the length of this retest here, this may be a traveling channel as well that widened just ever so slightly. And it still fits pretty well. So we'll keep an eye on that. We're approaching those overnight lows again. Bounce here. That micro trend was still intact, unless it is break new extreme already, but it's hard to tell at that moment. This uptrend may want to retest, and we're bouncing at these overnight lows. So let's see if we can maybe get a retest on this downtrend and then like a higher low off these lows again. And we get the strong bearish bar, but it's just a first entry, and you got that micro trend in play. Get a higher low here. I'm worried about this trend retesting. The setup bar is very large compared to the signal bar. You can see 12 ticks versus 5, so it's more than double the size. And it's starting to look rangy again. You probably do want to retest this uptrend, but it's hard to know in this area, so I'd avoid that. Ends up working. You've got this trend working now. This may be another traveling channel that fits pretty well. And it's working higher. Pushes right up to those overnight highs. So now we've got a retest on this uptrend, and we're at the range highs. Turns right there, but your micro trend's intact. Pushes higher once again. You get another bearish bar. Get a close outside and a new high. Let's see what happens when we come back to that EMA. Got 3 bearish bars. We are bouncing in this general area here. If we adjust just barely, you get more touches right here, and then we touch right here, and then you can see it reacting in this area. We get a first entry long, and now we get a second entry long. It's kind of hard to know if this is forming kind of on those highs or if it's bouncing off of it, because this did kind of travel this resistance area here. Bar's pretty good. EMA held. Does look like we have a close outside new high, just barely. Your downtrend has played out, and you're bouncing in that general area of the overnight highs. So, and at the EMA after it held right here, it did have a long distance that it traveled here without testing it, so it's harder to know. It's aggressive, but I took this trade personally. I think it's okay. Turns out you needed a small scalp to make it work. It failed on me. I went for just a bit too much, and you can see it reverse there. I guess your clues here would have been that we popped out that overnight range area, and also this does already have a little break new extreme. I was watching my second chart like I normally do, and it looked to be in play still on there. So you really need to treat these charts. If you watch 2 charts, you need to treat them independently. So it didn't offer a good bar, but on here obviously it did. But we've got that break already. So tough one there. If you took it, I think it's okay for a very small scalp, but you probably want to get out before this little resistance area right here. It did push higher here, but you know we've got the close from Friday, or excuse me, from Thursday, the ES and the New York Stock Exchange. So still think it's okay, but context isn't all that great locally. It looks pretty good. So it pushes lower here. There may be some wider channel we'll keep an eye on. This looks okay. Starting to stack up very sideways in here. So we'll draw our congestion there. Pushes lower. Maybe a close outside, new high. Now it's pushing a lot lower. It may be in ranges. A lot of times you want to start your trend from the lower high or the higher low if you're a bullish trend. And often it'll allow you to draw it a little bit steeper. You can see there that fits pretty well. Pushes back to that EMA, rejects pretty strongly. Higher low, but we're just mid-range, and this channel's in place, and nothing here. Pushes lower once again. Pushes strongly back to that EMA. We get a first entry short, and now we get a second entry short. A couple ticks on the bottom. You can see it's also a triple test. Kind of pushed above it here, but then we get 1 test, 2 test, 3 test. Second entry short, great setup bar. Right off that trend line of the steeper downtrend here, off that EMA. I think this is a decent trade. Aggressive just because the signal bars aren't all that great. and you can see it doesn't trigger here. We get another potential signal bar, same high here. Once again, doji-like, but it's pushing off that resistance still. So it's still bearish, a couple ticks. So at this point, you wouldn't have taken this because it didn't trigger. So I think this is a decent trade. A little aggressive because it's starting to stack just a bit, and the bar's not perfect. But once again, both of these bars sold off. So you can see obviously there's some resistance here, and that trend line still seems to be in play. So it needs to sell off here. If it doesn't trigger, then we need to be worried, and it does trigger. Unfortunately, it backs up, gets a little bit scary, but then it does end up taking off, and you get your scalp. Pushes to the new low. You could even adjust it a little bit wider. Fits off this swing right here at the initial, right where the trend started, and then it's holding right here and right here. Maybe just the smallest little break here. It's not all that convincing. If I draw it, just barely moved. Maybe a small break, but let's see. Bouncing at the overnight lows. Pushes lower. And now definitely we've got an overshoot if this isn't already a break, a new extreme. So let's see where we're bouncing here, kind of just no man's land. Yes, it ends up bouncing there. We get a first entry short, but keep in mind we've got that overshoot and we're breaking out of these overnight lows. Does appear this micro trend has probably played out. We get this second entry short. This is really tempting. Notice that we're not back at that overnight low again. And also, like I said, this is clearly an overshoot, which almost always will lead to a break. So I think you want to avoid the second entry short. It definitely looks good locally, just from a two legs back perspective, and the signal bar and setup bar look nice, but I would avoid that. It doesn't trigger anyway, so no harm, no foul. You don't get tricked into that one. So now we got a break, new high from this. We come back to the EMA. This may want to retest. It's hard to know if the range is going to take precedence. Overshoots can oftentimes lead straight to a reversal, especially in range type behavior. And keep in mind, like I said, you may have that little break right here already anyway. So it pushes below, just kind of pushing each way. It's very V-shaped. Looks like it may want to retest this downtrend. We get this lower high, but it's moved very far. The bar is really large. I think you need a second entry here or a failure if you're going to consider a short. You can see it would have reversed on you. You get the higher low, and it's bouncing at this little support area that's now formed. Just kind of weird V-shapes in here. I don't think you want to take anything. Pushes a lot higher up to that midline. Obviously got another micro trend in play here. That seems pretty decent. See what happens at the midline here. Get a first entry new high. Comes back to the EMA. You get this lower high. It's kind of hard to know what's happening. You're right in the middle of these V-shapes. Rather large bar as well. Kind of occurred on that EMA rather than pushing below it and testing it. So I think you want to avoid that. It's really hard to know what's going to happen here. And we get this really strong bar right here for our second entry long. Fortunately, same situation. Context isn't all that clear. We've got this downtrend in play. We don't really have a clear uptrend at this point. There may be something forming like this, but I don't like the gap there all that much, but it does fit really well off the highs. It confirms right here. So this may be valid. It's just hard to trust in real time at this point. You may want to get another touch first before you confirm, before you consider taking anything off of it. But yeah, this bar is rather strong right here, but with that micro downtrend and no micro uptrend in play, I think you want to avoid it. You can see it reverses here. You get a fail second entry short, but just kind of the same situation as laying off the long. I think you want to lay off the short too. You're getting close to this support. This bar was super strong, so I'm kind of wanting to avoid both ways here. This side due to context and the micro downtrend, and then this side due to the strength of this bar and the location of it. So I think you want to avoid that failure. Would have triggered and starts going sideways. So with these failures, if they don't act quick, you definitely probably want to try to get out, break even. And now we get this second entry short. It's rather sideways, and this you can kind of see prices grinding up this trend line. Locally, this micro downtrend, if you widen it just barely, you can justify saying it's still in play and that this is the first break. That actually looks decent still. So if you took this for a very small scalp, I think it's okay, but I think there's a lot of things going against it as well, contextually. I think locally it's okay, but that congestion scares me a little bit. So I'm going to mark it orange as basically means super aggressive, but you need a really small scalp here, and it would have worked for a small scalp or several points really. Bounces here. It looks like we have a break. And now we get this higher low. This higher low is tempting. It's right into that EMA that just held, so it makes me want to avoid it. You also broke your wider trend line here. So I think you want to avoid this. If it occurred lower, maybe down in this area, it'd be fine. Or if it pushed strongly above the EMA, you'd have a better case. But forming right into that EMA with a bad setup bar as well, I think you want to avoid it. It does work, pushes higher. You get a failure here, but it goes way too high. Appears we have a micro trend in play. Pushes up here to this midline, and it appears that this this wider uptrend here did want to retest, and we got it now. So let's see. We come back to the EMA. This micro uptrend is rather strong right here. So I think you can consider a second entry long if it occurs near this trend line and at the EMA. So let's see. We get the first entry. Now we get the second entry. Unfortunately, it's a good bar, but unfortunately way too high up. Pushes all the way back to this midline where we've turned so much today. Earlier today, you can see how many times we've turned, and then obviously right there on that short trade we could take. It turned at that same area. Same here. Turned here again, and then now we just turned here. So locally, too far, right into the bigger context that's telling you to not trade into that midline. So I don't think you want to take that. You can see it would have turned on you. You get a failure here, but near that EMA and starting to stack sideways. So it could be seen as a triple test, but you just don't have much room to that midline, and you're expecting this strong micro uptrend to probably retest. Now we come back, we get a, it's almost like a visual second entry. You have a leg down, two-legged correction, leg down. This one's pretty tempting. If it's set up better locally, I think you can take it. This strong setup bar right here, closing below that EMA on its low, is a bit worrisome. It's 9 ticks compared to 6, so it's not that much bigger than the signal bar, but this little weak body bar without a nice lower wick here tells me that the strength of the bearish bias is pretty strong, and it's a little bit scary. So if you took this for a small scalp, I understand, but locally I just didn't like it. If this closed somewhere in here, this setup bar, and then we pushed lower, it had a nice wick, and it came up and closed about the same spot, I think you can consider it, but this didn't form all that strongly to justify a visual second entry near some resistance, in my opinion. It would have worked for a small scalp. Comes back, you get a no higher low there, it pushes lower. So now obviously you've got this little range here, and actually you can see that that's 330, so no more setups. So yeah, we'll see how the day closed out. Pushed higher, started getting V-shaped turns again. You can see that support level just kept holding. So yeah, not too many setups today, but a couple good ones early on. Fortunately, I wasn't here early enough to catch these. Then I took this loser here, but then I caught this winner. So yeah, you had the lower high after the big downtrend and two-legged correction, expecting a new low. You had the higher low quadruple test right here, far from the EMA. You had the second entry long, kind of a breakout pullback, a little risky. Maybe a lapse of judgment on my part, not noticing this break here. But for a small scalp, I think it's okay with the way that EMA held with the good signal bar. You had the second entry short here, confirming the trend line, the resistance, and the EMA as well. Bar's not all that great, but decent. You had the second entry short here that you could probably consider for a very small scalp, expecting a retest on this downtrend. But you had some bullish momentum working up and a potential trend line, so also some congestion, so I think that's a bit risky. So yeah, not too many setups, but a couple good ones. Hope you guys enjoyed that. If you're interested in trading how we do, check out our course at topicktrading.com. A lot of great content in that. It can really help improve your trading if you take the time to do the homework. It's a lot of homework. And if you liked our videos, make sure to like and subscribe. And we'll see you guys next week. Thanks for watching. Bye.